Welcome back to the second episode of the Delay of Game podcast. Today we'll be going over the NHL play-ins and our predictions for the series outcomes. So the first series we have is Toronto versus Columbus. Toronto is the 8th seed and Columbus is the 9th seed. My prediction is that the Blue Jackets will win in 5.
All right, I have Toronto winning in five.
Well, my reasoning for Columbus winning in 5 is simply that their defensive core is just better. Even if, like, let's say Toronto does have much better offense and they've spent a lot of their cap space on uh, generating top tier offensive talents. But for me, Columbus has the edge, a huge advantage in terms of defense. And if they're all healthy, you have probably one of the best defensive cores in the league, which is why I think the Blue Jackets are going to win in 5.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair prediction. But I have Toronto in five because I think their top end stars are just way too much for Columbus to handle. I mean, they've got so much talent up front and depth. And they've also got a pretty underrated D core with like Riley, Muzzin, some experience. Um, like you said, Columbus does have some good defensive players like Seth Jones and Werenski. And also Merzlikins and Korpisalo had really good years for Columbus. And I think another big factor is I think Tortorella has a lot more experience than Keefe for Toronto. So that could also be a big factor. But ultimately, I think Toronto will end up winning the series in a close one.
Yeah, I agree. I think this series will probably be pretty close. Could go either way, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, the next series we'll talk about is Pittsburgh versus Montreal. Pittsburgh is the 5th seed, and Montreal is the 12th seed. I have Penguins in 3.
Yep, exactly the same for me.
Right, I think this one is probably the the easiest one to predict because Pittsburgh is just so much better in my opinion than Montreal.
I mean, you have two generational players in Crosby and Malkin. Um, I mean, we got Price on Montreal, but they don't really have much else.
Right, you don't even know if Max Domi is playing at this point, which is totally not his fault, but just not having Max Domi on the team is, well, if you don't have Max Domi on the team, it's going to be just that much harder to win against Pittsburgh.
I mean, Montreal wasn't even close to a playoff spot this year, so I don't think anybody's expecting them to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
But it'll be a good experience for their young guys just playing these meaningful games.
Okay, next series we have the Islanders at the 7th seed against the 10th seed Florida Panthers. I have Islanders in 4.
Same for me, Islanders in four. Well, I think first of all, this is going to be a really good coaching battle series. Barry Trotz and Joel Quenneville, both very good experienced coaches with Stanley Cup. Um, I ultimately think though that the Islanders' defensive system will just be too much for the Panthers, and the Panthers have been pretty inconsistent this year with like Bobrovsky, who's been struggling. Um, and yeah, I mean they have good talent up front, but their defense is just pretty weak compared to the Islanders.
Yeah, I I agree with most points there. I think Florida is just kind of a weaker team than New York. They're just not as good. But also, if Bobrovsky like shows up, he could easily just steal some games for Florida and they could win. But that's kind of been like Florida's problem throughout the years. Bobrovsky kind of being inconsistent, and you don't really know what you're gonna get with him.
Yeah, they're definitely all offense. Their defense is really weak.
Yeah, I think New York is just more overall like a better rounded team. So I think that's why I have Isles in 4. They have the better chance of winning here. For the last play-in round of the East, we have the 6th seed Carolina Hurricanes against the New York Rangers in the 11th seed. I have Canes in 4.
I've got the New York Rangers in 5.
Okay, okay. I think Carolina is super underrated. Teams don't give Carolina enough respect, to be honest. I think they're they have super talented offense, and their defensive core is also like one of the best in the league. To be fair, I think Dougie Hamilton might be questionable, like in terms of health, but if they're healthy, Carolina has easily one of the best defensive cores, and their offense is pretty good as well. So I think Carolina has better odds than New York. I mean, to be fair, the Rangers are not bad either. You have Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, but they might steal like a game or two. But I think overall, Carolina still has the edge in this one. Canes in 4.
I mean, like, not that this matters very much, but I think the Rangers swept the season series like 4-0. So they definitely, I think they've learned to shut down the Canes defense. But yeah, Panarin and Zibanejad, they just had phenomenal seasons for the Rangers. I mean, Aho and like Svechnikov, they're good players as well for the Canes, but I think the Rangers definitely have the edge for offense. And like you said, the Canes have a very good defensive core, probably one of the best in the league with like Hamilton, Jacob Slavin. But I don't know, just Panarin. Like I've seen him this season. I just don't know how they're gonna shut him down.
Yeah, Panarin is pretty crazy, so he could I could see him easily just taking over.
And Adam Fox, I think, was kind of snubbed for a Calder nomination. He was phenomenal this year in his rookie season. And also, I think Igor Shostorkin. I think if he gets a start, he could be definitely a sleeper goaltender. I just don't think Carolina has the goaltending.
But that defensive core, though.
I know. I mean, that's the tough. That's why I think it's gonna be really close.
Yeah, true. I think it might go to 5. I'm sticking with it. I still think Canes in 4 though.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Now we're gonna move on to Western Conference play-ins. The first one we're gonna talk about is Calgary versus Winnipeg, 8th seed versus 9th seed. I have Jets in 5.
Yep, same Jets in 5.
Okay, well, um, for me, I just think Calgary is kind of inconsistent. They've been kind of inconsistent this year. Like Johnny Gaudreau has his ups and downs. I think this year was more of a down year. If he shows up in the playoffs, though, I could see Calgary winning this. But for me, Winnipeg is just the better overall team. Like they have great offense and basically a Vezina caliber goalie. I think it'll be close, but Jets take this one in 5 due to their consistency.
Yeah, I mean with Hellebuck, he had like a Vesna caliber season. Their offense, I think, is definitely better than Calgary, and like you said, Johnny Gaudreau definitely struggled a bit this year. His size will be a bit of an issue in the playoffs, just like last year. I think Calgary does have probably a stronger defensive core with like Giordano. Um, but I do ultimately think that Winnipeg will come out ahead.
Move on to 5th seed Edmonton Oilers against the 12th seed Chicago Blackhawks. I have Oilers in 4.
I have Oilers in 4 as well.
So Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, probably one of the like best 1-2 tandems in the league besides maybe I don't know Ovechkin, Backstrom, Crosby, and Malkin, right?
Yeah, definitely this year. I think they were by far the best.
Those two are crazy.
I know, and they're so young as well.
Yeah, I think for me, Chicago might steal a game or two if Patrick Kane goes crazy, which he usually does. So I think Chicago might win a game or two here, but overall, I think Edmonton they just have so much offense. I mean, and their defense isn't even that bad, which is why I think Oilers will win the series.
Yeah, like I think McDavid and Draisaitl, they're just going to be way too dominant. and they'll overtake the series. And they're really pretty much stronger in like almost every category besides maybe goaltending.
I don't know if Corey Crawford's actually playing.
Yeah, that's a good point. If he's not playing, then that's even worse.
That's so much worse if Corey Crawford isn't playing.
I mean, like they have no other like starting goaltender or like veteran goaltenders with experience.
Yeah, their starter will be Malcolm Subban, I think.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be interesting.
Like you said, I think Patrick Kane could have a good series and steal a game or two. But I mean, the same thing could be said about McDavid and Draisaitl. So I think definitely Edmonton is going to take this series.
Yeah, I agree. Oilers in 4. Okay. Next, we're moving on to the 7th seed Vancouver Canucks against 10th seed Minnesota Wild. I have Canucks in 4.
I have the Canucks in 5. All right, so I think Vancouver, they just have too much overall just upside and talent over the Wild. The Wild, they do have a lot more experience and more veteran players on their team, like Koivu and Stahl, and Suter. I do think Minnesota's defense, they could neutralize Vancouver's fast, like run and gun style, like they were able to during the season. But I think overall Vancouver's just, I think they're the better team. And Markstrom could also steal a game for Vancouver.
I agree. There's so many wild cards on Vancouver because none of them have really had playoff experience. So this will be their first time really getting into the physical nature of playoff hockey. So I think there's kind of like a unknown factor going in just because a lot of the players haven't had that experience yet, which is why I think they might be able to surprise us and just absolutely dominate the Wild. But then there's also that factor where you don't really know where you're gonna get, and Minnesota Wild might just totally shut them down. But I think Markstrom definitely gives the Canucks an edge if he's playing because he's just been so good this year. I think he can easily steal a game or two. I think someone to watch out for in Minnesota is probably Kevin Fiala. He's been pretty good this year. I think he's I might be having career year, but he's been really good this year. I think he's someone who could potentially score a lot of goals, a lot of points. So I think this will be possibly close, but I have Canucks in 4.
Yeah, one player I think to watch out for is Michael Furlan. It'll be interesting to see how he does coming off of all of his injuries.
So our last series for the play-ins is the 6th seed Nashville against the 11th seed Arizona Coyotes. I have Coyotes in 5.
I have Nashville in 4.
All right, so we have the differing opinions here. I think this is like my upset series where Arizona is gonna win, just based on the fact that they have guys like Phil Kessel, Taylor Hall, known scorers in the league. I think if Phil Kessel shows up in this play-in series, he could steal a game or two, just purely by scoring goals.
I mean, I think like both teams, they've had like underachieving offensive players this season, like Kessel and maybe Keller on Arizona, and Duchesne, Johansson, and Forsberg have all been pretty underwhelming on Nashville. I do think Arizona this year has definitely had better goaltending with Kemper and Ranta, so they definitely have the edge on that category. But I think Nashville's defense with like Yossi, who had a Norris caliber season, and Ekholm and Ellis, I think they'll just be too much to handle.
That's fair. I think that, yeah, Nashville's defense core is pretty good. Yossi could probably absolutely shut down the Coyotes.
Yeah, it'll be close though.
Yeah, I think it'll be close. All right, so that wraps up our second episode of the Delay of Game podcast, going over our NHL play-in predictions. Let us know in the comments if you agree or disagree. Give us some input on what you think the outcome of the play-ins will be, and we'll see you all next time.